after. We do this, and then as the Academy Awards people say, we do the party after. We've been on a lot of culinary adventures, you and I, around this area, haven't we?
Oh, we have. And I'm trying to think if tequila has been involved. And yes, it has at some point, I believe.
I'm sure. However,
why did I even raise that question?
Previous to this book, it didn't occur to me that one time we should do Italian. We've done Japanese, we've done Asian, we've done all these other things. But now that I have read The Burial Hour with its fabulous scenes of Italy, I feel that we should do an Italian restaurant.
And if anyone here works for the Internal Revenue Service, just for the record, every meal in that was eaten in Italy. So when you look at my taxes and see the expense in euros, they're completely legitimate. I had to be accurate about it.
So let me just get this straight. You are a famous person who's going to release his taxes?
Yeah. Oh, yes, yeah. No, that's an alternative fact if you heard that. Ooh.
Awesome. So, which is this, like 16th Lincoln Rhyme?
This is the 13th.
13th. Oh, lucky 13.
Yeah, lucky 13.
Right. Yeah. And so Lincoln, whom has, for a long time was in a wheelchair as a full-blown paraplegic, now has achieved a tiny range of motion.
Yeah, it was interesting when I envisioned the character in the late 1990s. Medical science was at a certain point where somebody who suffered from quadriplegia was indeed largely paralyzed, didn't have really many options. But over the years, there have been really some remarkable both surgical and rehab techniques, and certainly prosthetic techniques that can restore a fair amount of functioning. It doesn't restore sensation. There's nothing that can do that at this point. That may happen, but it can certainly restore movement. And so the question has come up: does his ability to move kind of remove his ability to be the great forensic scientist? And that's an issue that will have to be addressed in the future.
Well, there's some big things going on. I went in yesterday. Every 3 months I go to Mayo, and they give me a PRP shot, so I don't have to have my other knee replaced. Any of you know about plasma replacement? They basically draw blood, and they whirl it around in a machine to get it into plasma, and then they use an ultrasound to see into your joint. And when they jam, it really hurts, jam the needle into the joint, the injury then starts a healing process and the plasma flows in. And so,
ouch.
Now, it's not that big an ouch. I mean, I don't have to have anesthesia, but it's not fun. I also get it in my thumb, and you can see it's kind of bruised, and that one really hurts because the little joint's so small. But the reason I brought it up is not my medical history, but the doctor and I have become really good friends, and so we chat about forensic stuff. And Mayo is now approved to do stem cells.
Oh.
And the thing that's interesting is that they don't have any evidence that stem cell therapy works any better than PRP therapy. However, the price differential is $700 for a PRP shot, and it's $4,500 for a stem cell shot, or $6,700 if they also include your thumb. So I'm sticking with but while he was talking, he then told me, Jeffrey, that they are now experimenting with amniotic fluid on the theory that amniotic fluid might indeed produce even more rejuvenation.
Fascinating. Oh, okay.
So when you talked about sensation, it's certainly possible that stem cells and amniotic fluid and things like that might, improve.
Yeah, well, every year when I sit down, I've done a couple Lincolns in a row now, but every year when I sit down, or every 2 years, if that's the schedule, I always look up what the latest developments are, and there are a lot.
And the prosthetics, too. Some of you were here for Greg Isles last night, yes? He does have a prosthetic leg now, but if you didn't know that, you really couldn't have told, and I thought, because 20 years ago, if he'd lost his leg in that wreck, he might look like, Long John Silver or somebody.
Right, yeah.
So anyway, digressing on, Lincoln is now also thinking about actually getting married.
Yes. Oh, listen to that. I could have said something like, yes, there are great social and criminal aspects of the book that we're dealing with here, and you would have nodded and said, that's interesting. Lincoln and Amelia getting married. Wow, now all of a sudden we're very excited about that. I would say easily 3/4 of my emails have to do with the personal relationships of the characters. Lincoln and Amelia, Catherine Dance and Michael and or John. She still hasn't made up her mind yet, or maybe she has, but you don't know it yet. I was just talking in the back. Someone had asked me, had I ever been in a movie of one of my books, and no, I was not. However, I was in a soap opera, As the World Turns, some years ago. Be careful what you say on live television. That's just a rule, because I was on the CBS morning show some years ago, and had I was trying to be silly. And I said, oh, CBS, that's interesting because you air As the World Turns, and, I just have to say I'm rather cross because Craig Montgomery got away with the murder of May Lynn, and he never should have done that. And I laughed, and the presenter laughed, and then I got a call. My publicist got a call afterwards from the producer of As the World Turns, who was a big fan, saying, Jeffrey, you know the show so much, how would you like to be on it? And I said, okay, as a dead body. And she said, that'll be fine. Well, we all know from reading books that a corpse without a backstory is meaningless. We don't care, right? Like, I'm not going to mention Steven Seagal by name. Oh, because he could beat the you-know-what out of me. But in those bad made-for-TV movies or bad action films, we don't care about the henchmen who get killed. So if you want true drama, you need to create a fully fleshed-out individual. Well, they've spent 4 days of scripts reading lines for me to be a fully fleshed-out character. More work than I've ever done in my life. And I had to do my own stunt work because they don't use stunt doubles on soap operas. And I got killed by, do you ever remember the show, I think it was Dallas, John James, do you know the actor? He was acting against me. He was the one who killed me. I was cast as a corrupt reporter. It was
typecasting all the way.
Exactly. And I'll tell you, and I don't know how we got on this subject, Barbara. It often happens. But I will tell you one thing. I just showed up at the set, it's in Brooklyn, actually, and I was wearing what I usually wear, dark jeans, like a T-shirt and a dark jacket, and they directed me to the wardrobe, and so I walk in and say, I'm Jeffrey so-and-so, I'm here for the wardrobe, and he said, oh yeah, you're a corrupt reporter. Oh, you've already been here. That's your costume. So, oh, that's all right. I think you may be able to find it somewhere, but please don't bother to look.
Well, one of the reasons that I mentioned it is that, while they're doing other things, the question of a venue, in case they get married, sort of filters its way around in the book, which makes it, I think, extra fun to read.
Oh, I'm sorry, but I know why I mentioned that whole long boring story. There was a point to it. There was a point to it. We love the soap opera aspect of books. That's why I like the Lincoln and Amelia relationship. And I mean soap opera with all respect, of course, because we care about human relations, and we care about that kind of drama, the personal drama. So that's been a recurring theme in the book. That is, if they both survive to the end.
Always scary. And particularly if you're going up against the Italian bureaucracy and whatever, you just don't know what might happen. But anyway, before we get there, what actually happens? Why don't you tell us?
Sure. The book begins in New York City, where Lincoln and Amelia have discovered a video of a victim apparently about to be hanged to death. He's kind of teetering on a rickety improvised gallows, and there's music to the soundtrack, and the music is a synthesizer playing a waltz, but the bass line of the waltz is not the lower notes on the synthesizer. It's the victim's breathing, which has been sampled. You can do that. You take a recorder and feed that into the keyboard, and the music slows, the gasps of the I don't remember whether it's a heartbeat or the gasp. I do both throughout the book. They slow, the scene gets darker and darker, and then a little, like a chilling slogan comes up on the bottom: copyright the composer. And they understand that they have maybe a half hour or an hour to track him down. Well, I won't say what happens. except to give you the information that the villain is found, but he escapes and flees to Italy, and thinking that, of course, Lincoln and Amelia are not going to pursue him to Italy. For one thing, Lincoln is, of course, a quadriplegic, and Amelia's a New York City policewoman, but never count out Lincoln Rhyme and Amelia Sachs. And so guess what? Guess who shows up in Italy to the great perturbation of the Italian police, who are not used to this dynamic duo. The book is much more than it seems, and I think I'll say only this, that Ernest Hemingway said, if you want to send a message, go to Western Union. Now if he said that, he'd have to change it to, if you want to send a message, send a tweet or put it on Facebook, although the idea of Papa with an iPhone sitting out with, rum in the sun, texting, is just too jarring for words. But nonetheless, I think books should have some resonance to them. And this book looks at a topic that you, of course, in this state are quite familiar with, as are all border states, and that is, it looks at human smuggling, at immigration. In Europe, it's called asylum seeking more, because I would suspect that many immigrants coming into the United States are coming for economic reasons, although some are fleeing regimes, certainly probably more in Central America, but certainly in Mexico fleeing the drug cartels. In Europe, they are fleeing horrendous conditions, drought, terrible economic conditions in sub-Saharan Africa. Of course, the failed state of Libya, Tunisia is no bed of roses either, certainly from Syria. Although the trip from Syria to Italy is very far, very arduous. From the North Africa, it actually is not that difficult. So Italy is being crushed now by the asylum seekers and the refugees, and the book looks at that, and that's the only verb I'm going to use, looks at it, because if you do choose to read it, you will find surprises and twists and turns galore. And I simply have to say, in all immodesty, that Marilyn Stasio reviewed the book last week and gave it a good review. But she described what I just did about looking at this issue, and in referring to my decision to do that, she said this: the final sentence in the review, "Takes guts, that does." So I can die a happy man having that from Marilyn Stasio.
Absolutely. I sent that review out on our e-news today, because I thought she made a truly excellent point. Now, in order to really deal with that subject, you sent them to southern Italy.
Yep.
You sent them to Naples, rather than, it wouldn't be quite the same in Milan.
Yeah.
You need to have sea access, actually.
Sure. And you also have Naples. I've been there a number of times, and Naples is such an amazing city. It is the home of the Camorra, which is it's the mafia of Campania. That's the region there, and there are several organized crime systems throughout Italy. One is the mafia in Sicily, of course. The Camorra is in Campania. That's Naples. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, actually. It's like the Ngrachia in Calabria to the south, and then there's another one in organization. It's the like the Sacred Blood, the Order of the Sacred Blood in Puglia, which is in the southeast, and that doesn't even. Those are the indigenous Italian organized crime families. That doesn't even count the Albanian gangs and some of the others on the Adriatic Sea, which are equally violent and brutal. But the Camorra is just a fascinating organization. There's a great deal of course, wonderful cooking there. A great deal of, believe it or not, corruption in politics, and it's a very old city, obviously. And near Vesuvius, we have the Herculaneum and the Pompeii influence, and then a huge amount of Greek influence too, because the Greeks, curiously, this was a bit of a surprise to me, did not settle so much on the Adriatic side. They came around and settled Sicily, a bit in Sardinia, which is further north from Sicily, and then in Naples and Campania. And so that melting pot, to me, was quite interesting. because it also reflected the melting pot of the incoming refugees and asylum seekers. And also the food is so good there.
It's amazing. I remember David Hewson, who's an author I really like, told me that
David,
he thinks
he's
some
great,
of the best food you can ever eat is in Sicily, which
in Sicily,
was actually Greek more than anything else. The runes there, and Palmyra, the names, the whole thing. Any of you read Elena Ferrante, or you've seen her bestsellers and so forth? They bring Naples to life. My Beautiful Life and various other titles. They're very literary, but and there's a huge mystery about who she is. And she's a pseudonymous author, so Italian journalists, as far as I can work out, spend their waking hours trying to figure out who she actually is.
Which I thought would be a good book in itself, to try to figure out the identity of the journalist.
But if you're interested, Naples doesn't figure that much in crime fiction. It's there's nonfiction,
Venice does, of course,
mafia stuff, right? But we like Venice. And although I have to say that Venice has so depressed Donna Leon, she's moved to Switzerland.
Really?
So, yeah, if you read her, and I think her new book, which we should have any moment, is truly astonishing. And it's basically about the lagoons more than it is about the city. Brunetti has to take a vacation and goes off to an island and spends his time out on the lagoons and stuff goes on. So, Michael Dibdin went all over Italy. I have an author named David Wagner who writes all over Italy, but Naples has just never been a popular venue.
Wanted to put it on the map, and I'll be there in 3 weeks, a month on tour, and we'll see what they say. If I disappear, hey, there's no such thing as bad publicity, right?
It will do your ears good, but it won't be much use for you.
Right. I knew there was a flaw in the plot.
You knew there was a flaw. So without giving a plot away, talk to me a little bit about the mechanics of getting Lincoln, to Italy.
Well, I was a little concerned about, I should tell you why I decided to set it in Italy. 2 years ago, I had the distinction, I'm being immodest again, but, facts are facts. I had the distinction of receiving 3 Lifetime Achievement Awards in 1 year, space of 1 year. And the same year I went on Medicare, so it's like, well, it's all over now. But I thought, no, I'm going to rise above this. And in accepting the award in Italy, one of them was the Raymond Chandler Lifetime Achievement Award in Italy, I said, and I will admit there was a glass of Vermentino or two involved ahead of time. Bad idea to give acceptance speeches when you're kind of high. And so I said, a standing ovation, auditorium filled. I was just so delighted. And I said, you know what? Wow. Thank you all so much. And in honor of this wonderful honor you're giving me, I'm going to set my next book in Italy. And they went crazy. And then I thought, I just decided I was going to set my next book in Italy. Help. And but then I thought, no, the Italians have been very good to me. I can't sell books. I don't sell many books in France. I do well in Germany and the UK and Japan and other countries, but I'll be number 1 on the list for an extended period of time. Yeah,
because you've won so many British awards.
Yeah.
Jeffrey's won all the Dagger awards. They're called. We give away Edgar's. It's really a tacky statue of Edgar Allan Poe. It's really kind of an embarrassing statue.
I have a knife. They give daggers. It's a real knife, and you have to. They tell you that you have to have checked luggage because you're not able to take it on the plane. You can't carry it on.
Yeah, but I mean, I remember, you won. You've been their international thriller dagger winner and short story dagger winner, all kinds of things. So obviously you're very popular. But I didn't realize the Italians were so.
And the reason for it, I think, is first of all, Rizzoli's my publisher, and they've done an amazing job for me. And if your publisher is behind you, as you as a publisher know, you can get behind an author, and you can make that author's career slowly growing him or her. But also, I taught a course in writing at Bocconi University, which is the business school. It's like the Wharton in Milan. And I did a little presentation, and I took out 3 products. I bought like mouthwash and toothpaste and deodorant or something, and I put them up on the podium. And everybody spoke English. I don't really speak Italian, but I had a little fun with it. I said, "Ecco, prodotto di consumo." That's consumer products. Then I put my book next to them, and I said, "Ecco, prodotto di consumo." a consumer product, and their faces just were aghast, because I had just said that I wrote a consumer product, and there was no difference between that, and that the manufacturer of the toothpaste, the mouthwash, geared a product to the audience, and they went about manufacturing it in a very, I guess we could say mechanical way, but out came a good product that people wanted. They had never heard that before. They had just had, the week before, they told me afterwards when we went out for, did I mention wine? Because it was Italy. And I actually don't recall his name, but I wouldn't say it anyway, a well-known literary author in Italy who got up on the lectern, smoked, and talked about himself for I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, and said, I write whatever I want to write, and if you don't like it, then just don't buy it. Well, this is a business school. That's not a good business model for them, for anybody. And so, I have to say, a lot of crime fiction follows that, I guess I would say, let's say, less than disciplined approach. Some of it's superb. I mean, they're wonderful writers. Gianrico Carafiglio, who's published here, and I'm sure you have his books here. Carlo Lucarelli, the fellow who, actually a friend of mine whom I dedicated the book to, Giorgio Faletti, who I think lived in Arizona part of the time. I don't think it was here, but I think it may have been up
He
in...
might have. Didn't he set his books on the Riviera?
Well, they were set in Italy, yes, and then also
In
here.
Monaco or whatever?
He set one here in America.
Okay.
But they take a different approach to it. So I think that's one of the reasons that my books have done very well, because they are, it's unique. They're fast-paced. They have a lot of reversals. Everything kind of ties together at the end.
That was really big on design. Do you think that, the technological aspects that approach, come up in your books really appeal to? I mean, they're so inept in so many ways, right?
Yeah.
But they are fabulous on, like, building cars and, all kinds of design. I always think it's an interesting contradiction.
It is.
In the Italian
It is,
character.
because
how could Berlusconi and Fiat all be in the same place?
I take a very light suitcase, because I guarantee you, when I'm on tour, I guarantee you that the ascensore will be out of order. It will not be working. I'm going to have to walk upstairs with my suitcase. There will be a strike of some kind, and at least one, and the trains won't be working, the buses won't be working, so you'll have to grab your stuff and run. And yet, this is the country that brought us Ferrari, Maserati.
That's true, and if you go to Milan, it's some of the highest end design, both architecture, furniture, and clothing in the whole world. I spent a week in Milan, and I was just,
And you still have money left. How interesting, Bob.
Not a lot. Not a lot. I actually took myself, I love this, it's so multicultural. I always wanted to see, I haven't always wanted to see. I thought I ought to see, as a serious opera person, the Ring Cycle just one time. Mm-hmm. My preference for Wagner is not to have anything translated, because his words are truly offensive and don't hold together all that well in lots of cases. But the music is wonderful. But I thought, I really should do this. And then I saw that Daniel Barenboim was going to conduct it at the last time the old La Scala Opera House was open. And I thought, all right, it's a message.
You had to go.
So that's why I went. But then I hadn't really thought much about Milan, and I was astonished. It is an incredible modern, high tech, along with all the old stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a wonderful combination. You can go see The Last Supper, which is sort of peeling off the wall, and then
And there's still elements of 20th century history there. You can find walls with bullet holes still in them, and bomb craters. Most of, now West Berlin is now, of course, unified city, but what was West Berlin, you're not going to see any of that. It's all been gutted. East Berlin, you can still see some things. But you'll see a Roman ruin, and you'll walk across the street, and there'll be, I assume it's from World War II, bullet holes in there, in like an old brick wall, and then you'll see a newly designed, some sort of beautiful fashion boutique.
Right.
It's a
Or the
fascinating.
Palace of the Dukes
Yeah.
with Leonardo sort of stuff around. While you're there with Lincoln, it's almost a shame to waste the opportunity to go like one more time around Italy.
Right. Yeah. Well,
Go north.
Well, and somebody said, why does it make sense to take Lincoln to Italy? Because it's not really an accessible country. They don't have the Americans with Disabilities Act variation over there. And then I thought, he sits in his room in New York City and doesn't get out. Because why? He's a curmudgeon. He doesn't want to get out. He never liked getting out in the first place. But he's the sort of person whose passion is the evidence and the gas chromatograph and so forth. And Amelia's the one who leaps into the Ferrari or the Maserati, except in this case, what she leaps into is like a 12-year-old Opel Kadett. It's the only car she can find. And I won't say anything, but there's some kind of fun things about a young man that whose aide they enlist. His name is Ercole, and he's kind of a lovable character. And I sure hope he survives the end of the book because he was so much fun to write.
So you've done 13 for Lincoln, and how many now have you done for Catherine Dance?
4 Catherine Dance.
And then you've done various interesting standalones. So I never know when you come and I ask you, what are you doing next? I absolutely never know the answer.
Well, I'm actually doing another Lincoln rhyme. That's because it's a contractual thing for my publishing company, and it's fine. I almost said, immodesty is the theme tonight. I almost said I can write anything. No, I can't write anything. However, as of the sort of books that I write, I can choose to write a Lincoln, a Catherine. I will enjoy either one for me just as much. But realistically, Lincoln Rhyme sells better. More people enjoy him. But on the other hand, a lot of people don't like Lincoln and are passionate about Catherine. So I want to make sure they're represented too. And I am not at the point, either because of my advancing years, did I mention Medicare and the 3 Lifetime Achievement Awards, that I can do really more than, like I could do a book and a half a year. So I can't do 2 books a year anymore. And I also do 5 or 6 short stories a year. So that's kind of my limit on that. So we will see another Lincoln, next year another Lincoln, and a standalone next year too. So I kind of lied to you. I'm going to do 2 books next year, but it'll be a shorter standalone. Another collection of short stories. The 4th will be out probably at the end of next year, and then the Catherine Dance book, and another standalone after that. I'm tired now. Wow.
Well, I really like that because that means we get to see more of him. So one year Jeffrey came just for my birthday. It was the only thing he did in November, December. My birthday's in December, but you came out, just especially for that. So that was really fun. Wonderful. And you are, in fact, a real master of the short story. Why is it that you like writing them? Of course, some authors, especially people who write big novels like you, just never get short stories.
When I teach my seminars in writing, and I'm going to do a shameless plug here. I am, this is just modesty be damned. There's nothing I can do about this.
This is a shameless self-promotional evening. Okay. It's okay.
Well, also, this year I'm the president of the Mystery Writers of America, and as part of that, I'm involved in the education committee. So I decided to volunteer to do my one-day writing seminar, volunteer to do it for each of the chapters. Now, where is the chapter here located?
Los Angeles.
L.A. Okay, I'll be doing
We don't have enough mystery writers in this region to have a chapter of MWA, so basically we are attached to the Los Angeles chapter.
Well, I will be doing the a seminar. It's the full-day course in writing, and how far? It's a 10-hour drive? How far is that from here?
No,
6.
it's not all that far.
Well, you can do 80 or 90 on these roads, right? You just look out for the armadillos. Do you have armadillos here?
Yeah, no, actually driving to Los Angeles is just as easy to drive as flying at this point. By the time you go to the airport and go through all that song and dance, you might as well just drive. Have they fixed the bridge on I-10? It's been fixed for a while because we had a glitch when a bridge collapsed. And
Barbara, that's more than a glitch. I'm sorry. That's like a bad thing.
Well, it really made it difficult to drive to Los Angeles with any speed, but once we fix that, there we are.
okay. All right.
So you really are going to have a busy year if you're
This will be a
going about doing seminars and the whole bit.
This will be a busy year. So, what was there a question before that? I'm sorry, I was just shamelessly
Yes,
self-promoting myself.
the question was, why is it that you enjoy short stories?
Oh, the short stories,
and what
yes.
facility
I'm sorry.
is it that it
I'm an
taps
author,
into?
too. What I was saying was when I teach my course, people will come up to me and say, I want to write novels, but I'm going to start on short stories. No, they're two entirely different things, two entirely different sets of skills involved. In my view, all mystery fiction, whether it's a novel or a short story or teleplay or whatever, has to involve a twist, has to have a surprise to it. There has to be that stunning moment when suddenly your expectations are shattered. Now, in a novel, that concept is married with the concept of character development and character emotional resonance. We need to care about the characters. Even the bad guys. I mean, Hannibal Lecter, as despicable as he is, we still care about him, not as much as about Clarice Starling, but we do care about him. Now, and there were, Silence of the Lambs had some very good twists in it. I like to incorporate twists into my books. I like as many as I can get in. The Burial Hour has about 3.5 surprise endings. But now in a short story, that's good for one solid twist, but we don't care about the characters. An example of a short story I wrote a few years ago, and this is giving it away, but it was a long time ago, and if you've read them, you will recognize it, about a stalker pursuing a young girl, middle school girl. And nothing bad happens to her, but except this kid, this high school kid, late high school, stares at her all the time, and he waits outside her window, follows her to school. And the girl's father is very protective, as one would hope a father would be, but he doesn't let her go out and go to the prom. She can't go out on dates. He has to watch her all the time because he's worried about this kid. And finally, the kid just simply will not go away, and what happens? He's killed, beaten to death, and what's the murder weapon? The father's golf club. And the police come and arrest him, and he's hauled off to jail. And the final scene of the short story is the 12-year-old girl getting ready in her prom dress, because now she's going to the prom. Why? And this is kind of revealed in a more clever way than I'm going to say now. Why? Because she'd been practicing her golf swing at school, and she took Daddy's golf club and his golf gloves, whacked the guy to death, planted the evidence in her father's, hid it in her father's car. Why? Because he wouldn't let her go to the prom. No, we don't like anybody in that scenario, do we? That works for a short story. And also I do have some ideas that simply cannot be expanded into a novel, but I write quite a few of them. I think I'll do 4 or 5 this year, and my fourth collection will be out at the end of next year.
Jeffrey, can you see them fizzing in his head, all these ideas? I mean, we have authors who sit here and say, just don't know what I'm going to write about, don't have another idea. And then we get Jeffrey, and you aren't going to live long enough to write all the ideas.
I love that idea about trying to discover the identity of the author. I think I'm going to work on that when I get home tonight. Yeah. Well, unless you want it, you can have it.
No,
I'll flip you for
I don't get to write books. I get to edit other people's books, which is actually more fun. And thank you very much for the great quote you did. We're publishing a book in August, Poison Pen Press, that is a lot to do with the creative process and what happens if writers get too submerged in their craft. And Jeffrey, I knew, was the perfect person to read this book because he loves all aspects of the creative process in writing.
Well, there's the concept of metafiction, which is fiction that looks at itself, and often it's done in a very cumbersome, self-conscious way. But this, and it was witty too.
Called Crossing the Line. It'll be out in August, and I thought it was fabulous.
Harrowing too, because you do cross the line.
Right, and it's a lot of it has to do with identities. If you're creating one, do you lose your own, which is an interest, or do you become submerged in it? It's a really interesting And a surprise from an author who's been writing historical fiction and never gave any sign at all that this was a subject that
I
preoccupied
hadn't
her.
read the earlier books, but I gather it was quite a departure.
Yeah, definitely so. So, do you all have questions you'd like to ask Jeffrey?
Sure. The question is, why is Lincoln a quadriplegic? When I was envisioning the book some years ago, an adage from the world of Hollywood came to mind, and that was this: that when a producer is looking for a new idea to turn into a movie, they call them products out there. We call them books, but I call them products too. Looking for a new product to create, they want something that's never been done before, completely original, and yet has been wildly successful in the past. Hence the sequel concept. And we laugh, but there's something to that. So I always like to do my formula for a book, which is this, very simply. It takes place over a short period of time. It has internal reversals, so that the cop we think is the good cop in Chapter 3, we learn at the end of Chapter 5 is actually the corrupt cop. So, and then the story goes on from there. And 3 or 4 big surprise endings, and then a bit of esoterica that we find kind of interesting. For instance, in The Burial Hour, the villain is obsessed with sound and music. So we learn the history of sound and sound recordings and the physiology of sound and so forth. So that's a typical Deaver book. And but then we need something different, so that people will get what they expect and yet something new. And I thought, I'd just seen a thriller movie, and it wasn't this one, but it was like this. This was one of the I think it was a Tom Cruise. What Mission Impossible is he in? Okay, it was maybe one of the Mission Impossible films, and it's toward the end of the film. And Philip Seymour Hoffman, wonderful actor whom we lost way too young, was doing his star turn as a villain, because a lot of the great actors like to do that star turn thing. And Philip Seymour Hoffman is beating up Tom Cruise at the end of the movie. Now, is there any doubt in anyone's mind that 5 minutes into this fight, where Philip Seymour Hoffman is picking up Tom Cruise, which may not be too difficult a thing to do, but I'm not commenting on that, and flinging him through glass walls, and then suddenly, oh, big surprise, Tom Cruise gets a little bump on the head, and he remembers that his father taught him to kickbox when he was 7. And he's dealt with all those daddy issues. Now he comes back and beats up Philip Seymour Hoffman. You know, I love movies like that. We all love movies like that. But I thought, what could we do that would make it more genuinely cathartic and exciting? What if we had a hero who was unable to remember he kickboxed, who was unable to do karate, who was unable to pull out a gun that he hid somewhere and shot the villain, who had to outthink the bad guy? And I thought at first, for The Bone Collector, the first book in the series, I will make him tied up with duct tape, but he can't fight the bad guy. He has to figure out another way to do it. And then I thought, well, that in itself is a cliche. No, I'm going to do something we've never seen. I'll make him severely disabled, and wrote the book. It also gave me the opportunity to explore a theme of assisted suicide, which is certainly a valid theme for people who are among people who are quite ill and suffer from severe disabilities.
That was that movie with what was her name? She won an Academy Award for it. No, it was the one with
that's
the
Bone
boxer.
Collector,
Sorry?
Hilary Swank.
Yes, it was Hilary Swank, and that was her drive once she was completely, and that was how the movie resolved. And so it's a very poignant thing.
I thought, I'll write it, I'll kill him at the end, and then go on from there. And yet, and I should mention, those of you who've heard my presentation, I outline a great deal, and the outline is like 99% of the final book. But I finished writing the book itself, and this is before we had movie interest. I said, you know what? No, that's not right. That wasn't right to kill him off. It would have been completely valid, but it wasn't right. And so that was a good thing too for my career, and for the my good friends American Express and MasterCard who rely on me and Lincoln Rhyme. So now everybody else is afraid to ask questions because I go on and on. But that was the answer to him. So, oh no, there's still have some brave souls here. So. Sure. The world is, the question was, do I plan it out ahead of time? The world is divided into two categories of people, and I will pick two other authors whose work I'm more or less familiar with, but whose comments on writing I'm extremely familiar with. Gustave Flaubert said, books are not made the way babies are made. They're made the way pyramids are made. There's a long pondered plan, and the book is created by blocks of stone carefully set one atop the other. George R.R. Martin said exactly the opposite, that books are not architecture, they are a plant. You put the seed in the ground and you nurture it and you kind of direct it, but it blossoms on its own and you're never quite sure how it will show up. I am a Flaubertian, if that is a word. I am an excessive outliner. I believe that the book should be highly planned, and I spend 8 months outlining the book. That's my full-time job. I do the research at the same time. And the outline for the Burial Hour was a little shorter than some of them. It was about 130, 140 pages. Because there are two reasons for this. One is that books are about pacing, and I write a very tightly plotted book or that takes place over a short period of time, a la 24, the TV show. And you can't allow any excess baggage in a story like that. And you have to know where all the clues are, where the people enter, where they leave, and it requires a schematic, for me at least. There's another reason why outlines are very important, and that's this. And you don't have to answer or raise your hand, but just ask yourself, have you ever read a book that should not have been written? Yes, you have. So imagine this. I get a great idea, a bang-up idea for the beginning of the book, and I sit down and out comes that first chapter like lightning. Oh, it's brilliant. And then out comes the second chapter because the energy's up and the juices are flowing. Then comes the third chapter, a bit slower. Then the fourth, fifth, sixth, progressively slower, slower, slower. And where am I now? 250 pages of pretty good prose into this story, and I have no middle. That's the dreaded middle you may have heard about. And I have no end. I have no surprise end. And remember, a book has to have a surprise end. And so what do? Two options. One, the intellectually honest thing, throw it out. Throw every single thing out. Because if you wrote a good first chapter for a bad book, think of the great chapter you will write for a good book. Throw it out and start over again. It's so hard to do that. It is so hard. Or, even worse, the worse alternative is to tack on a cliche-ridden middle and then a Deus Ex Machina ending where the villain is revealed from out of left field. Out that goes into the stream of commerce, and you have created a very bad producto di consumo, a very bad consumer product. But if you start with an outline, you get 3 weeks into the process, you have your wonderful little post-it note, great opening scene, but you don't write it, you just know what it is, you can write it at any time. You do the other post-it notes, and suddenly you realize, no, there's no middle, there's no end. You wad up 30 post-it notes, or 5 pages, and start over again. So much easier. If you're not afraid now, yeah, go ahead, ask a question. Oh, hi, good. No, but it's interesting you mentioned that because when I quoted those two authors, part of my presentation, my less formal presentation, is quoting other authors about writing. So I don't have a textbook, but I do have. I am planning to produce a book, probably within the next year and a half or so, that I will be an adjunct to what I teach. And the book is about quotations from famous authors. Stephen King is quoted quite a bit. Joyce Carol Oates, Francine Matthews, whom I appeared with a few years ago, said some wonderful things about writing. And it opens with a caveat, and I have to share this. And these are some devil's advocates about the beginning of a book I am putting together about writing. And Lillian Hellman from the Algonquin Roundtable said this: if I had to give authors any advice about writing, I would say never listen to authors giving advice about writing. And then Somerset Maugham, the great British writer, said there are 3 simple rules for writing a great book. Sadly, no one knows what they are. Yes, please. Oh, you're very welcome. Sure, thank you. Good question. And I'll repeat it. Where do the names of the characters come from? I have written almost about 40 novels, 80 short stories, and a radio play and a bunch of other stuff. And I mean that, by that I mean I've created a lot of characters. And so I often simply will look at my newspaper and see a name and lift that and put it in. But there are some rules to have. They have to be memorable. They cannot be too similar to another name, because confusion is anathema to a book that moves very quickly. So Arthur and Arnold, for instance, that would be a very bad thing to put into a book. It should be, my books are all done on tape, and I think the name has to be easy to pronounce. I wrote a book called Edge, published it all over the world, 25 countries. The character's name was Corte, C-O-R-T-E. In Italy, that is pronounced Corte. That's just the Italian pronunciation. There's no getting around that. And it was very jarring for me, and kind of jarring for the Italians, to hear me read from the book and say Corte. But that was kind of an unexpected consequence. So, generally I make them out of whole cloth. There should be a sort of a lyricism to the name. I will say and actually this is something I don't think I've ever addressed, but there has been a convention in writing, unfairly, but that's the convention that has existed for a long time. Men often get last names, women get their first names. Could be identical characters, could be equal levels of policedom or politics or whatever. I don't do that. I've never done that unless I refer to the man by his first name. It should be equal opportunity mayhem, murder and mayhem in my books. However, it sometimes is helpful if I'm talking about, say, a younger woman or younger boy, teenagers, for instance. It would be appropriate to use a first name there, but I would probably tend to take a name that might have a little more edge to it. So for instance, Morgan is a good first name. Could be a last name or first name. I spelled it. Oh, you noticed that? Yes, very good. And that was also a comment about the family, right? Remember, how'd you like to have her for a mother? I myself would not. That's the opening scene in the burial hour. I'll make another comment about names. I, as many authors do, will donate the name of a character for a good cause. I'm involved in literacy and literacy foundations and in animal health foundations because I breed and show dogs. And at an animal health organization auction at one point, women spent $5,000 or $10,000. I thought for her name to be in my book, but no, she wanted her dog in the book. That was fine. I said, well, I guess it's fine. See, I rarely have animals in my books because I've never hurt animals. I don't hurt children. And there's no sexual violence in my books. I mean, adults are kind of on their own. They may get killed or shot or whatever, but I kind of stay away from the stuff I find a little more distasteful. she said, but I really want my dog to be in the book, and she paid $10,000. She can have whatever she wants. I said, sure, what's your dog's name? Jackson. Oh, now that's a good police dog name, isn't it? Jackson. Two problems. Jackson is a Havanese. Do you know Havanese? This big. We're talking a Chihuahua dressed up like a dust mop, with all respect to Havanese owners out there. That was problem one, so I made Jackson a companion dog.
Emotional support dog.
An emotional support dog, yeah, exactly. Problem two, after I wrote the book, she said, oh, thank you so much. I forgot to mention, Jackson's a girl. So of course I said, Jackson, he did this or he did that. But it didn't matter. She was happy, and I think Jackson didn't really care one way or the other. We have time for maybe one or two more? Or, oh, sure. Have you read the book? No. Oh, okay. All right. That is addressed in the that's addressed in the book. Yep. No. But like many cars in Italy, it did have a manual transmission at least. Yes. Yes, the question was, when did I become interested in becoming a writer, and the whole process of crafting books, when did I get excited about that? And I was 8 or 9, really. I was reading books at a very young age, and I didn't read young adult books at the time. This is the 1950s, and we didn't have young adult books then. We had books like Nancy Drew, the Hardy Boys,
right?
Yeah,
Misty of Chincoteague, all those.
And those were, but those had no interest to me. I was, however, reading what we would consider adult books. However, back then in the 50s, they were very tame. Ian Fleming was a very euphemistic writer. There was no cursing. There was one instance. I'm not even going to say it now because I see we have a youngster way down there, but where where an obscenity was spelled out. He used the, like we will say, Lima Bravo, whatever. He spelled out one word. The only time I ever saw a curse word. The adult relations, let me put it that way, were all off camera. We think he was a ladies' man. There's no question about it. But there was nothing graphic about that. The violence was all off camera. So I could read those books, and I got very excited about storytelling. But I remember my poor neighborhood kids. I was not into sports at all. I had no talent for that. But I would go to the Saturday movies with my neighborhood friends and come back and rewrite the endings for the movies, and we would act them out. I'd make them. I was often John Wayne, but although I like to think I had a better ending than a lot of the John Ford films. But I was quite young, and I think people who do want to write get the bug pretty early. However, unlike art, unlike the plastic arts, painting, sculpture, or unlike music, there are no prodigy writers. You've got to live a while. So even some of the writers who've hit big in their late teens, those books generally are a bit unformed, or they're very specific to a genre that's a bit insular. It can be very successful, of course, but a lot of like fantasy writing or sci-fi writing is very technical, and it works, and they can be very, very good books. But to write a broader crime novel, I think you really need to have lived for a while, which is my excuse for the fact that I didn't get my acting gear until I was in my mid-30s and start publishing.
Well, let's see. You wasted your time. You were a lawyer. You were a reporter. You're a musician. It's like he was just laying around, right? Not right.
Eating bonbons.
Right.
Watching soap
Actually,
operas.
all the things that you did, come into your writing.
Inform the writing, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely, which makes it wonderful. All right, one last question, sir.
Oh, thank you. Very kind. Thank you.
You ever write a book without knowing the title?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the title comes sometimes halfway through. The Burial Hour was not my title. My publisher came up with that. There have been two titles that I have not come up with. The original title, which is the title in Europe, is The Hangman's Waltz, and that is I think the first subhead in the book. but the title that was used throughout Italy and throughout Europe, I can't think of the Italian now, but it's a literal translation of that. And I think my publisher felt that it was a bit archaic. Hangman has kind of a 19th century tone to it, and I didn't object to that. And rather than say come up with something else, they said we thought up the burial hour, and I Googled it to make sure there was nothing else, although I'm sure they had too, and I like it. And then so being a partner with my publisher, as you know authors should be, I wrote a scene in the book where the burial hour after the book was done, where the burial hour figures, and it was a very fortuitous thing. I think it enhances the book quite a bit.
And sadly, they could have made him title it The Burial Hour, whether he wanted to or not. So,
yeah, there is that.
Publishers have that right, which nobody realizes. I'm going to ask you a final question. I meant to ask this earlier, and I totally forgot about it. Why is it that you like to name your killers like the composer or whatever it is? What does that do?
Oh, Barbara, fascinating question, a very important question, because I play with twists and turns, and mistaken identities and anonymous characters are very, very important to the way that works. So we need to know that the villain is the composer, or if I may, because I'm just so into this Italian, il compositore. He doesn't sound bad when you put it that way, does he now?
It's like a Verdi opera.
Or a drink you'd order on the beach somewhere outside of Naples. But by not identifying him by name at first, that allows me then to get into somebody else's point of view and maybe have an entire conversation with the person who is in fact the composer, but we know them by the name Fred Jones or whoever it might be, and still play fair with the reader, so that at the end, when we realize Fred Jones is the composer, the reader doesn't say, you cheated. The reader says, oh, you know what? That's right. I could have figured that out if I thought about it. Fred Jones could have been the composer, but in fairness, we thought of him as the composer. So it's all manipulative on my part.
Well, it's supposed to be. No, I think the question that you raised is a really interesting one, and it reminds me, as we close, David Morrell, who's, a wonderful teacher of writing and so forth, sold his first book called First Blood to the movies, and it became Rambo. But unfortunately, when he sold that, he sold the rights to characters and names and all kinds of things. So I was sitting with him in his Santa Fe studio one day, and he was working on a book. And he said, I almost didn't write this book. And I said, why? And he said, well, I realized as I got through that some of the names that I'm not allowed to use, the principal character, have crept into this book, and so I can't do that. And I said, well, what was your solution? And he said, I just went back and renamed him. And he said, the whole book transformed. The entire book changed when he changed the name of the lead character. And so I've thought that was an interesting thing to do. If you're ever stuck, or if it's not going right, maybe renaming your character, which is a variation on what you just said, could be a way out. So, let's thank Jeffrey for coming to see us.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
And before we move to the book signing, we are indeed going to give away this Elliot Pattison book. 1 in 20. All right, those of you who have a book that you bought here should have a numbered slip in your book. So